Hi everyone, welcome to all of you for coming to visit us today. My name is LaColleen Washington. I'm the Executive Director here at the Community Music Center of Boston, and we are very honored to have a visitor. I know you all came here to see me, and I thank you for that, but know how you really came here to give us an opportunity to have a little bit of time to commune with the mayor of the city of Boston, Michelle. I'm just your welcomer, but our Chief Programming Officer, Corey Bodley, will be serving as our MC for the day. So I'd like to welcome Corey up to introduce our first performer.
Hello, is this on? Everybody hear me? Good morning. My name is Corey Bodley. I'm the Chief Programming Officer here at Community Music Center of Boston. I'm really excited to introduce our student performers from our Community Music School. We have our first student already up here. Is very prepared. His name is Jaden Hunt. He studies under Javier Rosario. He is 7 years old. He's going to play a song called Little Brown Bag for us.
Hi, my name is Kaden, and I'm going to play Little Brown Bag.
Our next performer has requested that they introduce themselves. So I'm going to call him on up. He's going to introduce everything.
I am Enzo, and now I'm going to do Saw.
Enzo studies with teacher Matthew here. Enzo studies with Matthew. Okay, I got that one right. So thank you so much, Enzo. That was amazing. Our next performer is going to be Genevieve Alacron G. If I'm correct, Genevieve is G. And if I'm correct, Genevieve is going to perform Lightly Roll. Great. Genevieve also studies with Alexander Morello. I'm going to call up Genevieve's sister, Cassandra Alacron G. And Cassandra also studies with Alexander Morello. And we'll be playing Beethoven Sonata number 20. John Caleb, I don't want to give too much away because I'm sure he's also going to be in the round table and will do an amazing introduction of himself there. I will just say that John Caleb is a really good representation of how students move through CCB. Started in our community music school and is now a youth employee in our youth development program. So John Caleb is going to perform J.S. Bach's Suite Number 2, the first movement. And I'll contact John Caleb on up. join us for a roundtable with Mayor Wu that will be moderated by our Executive Director, Lacolian Washington. So please bear with us for a second while we do a small.
Can you hear me okay through the microphone? Sound check. Hi, thank you everyone. Again, Lacolian Washington, Executive Director here. We're gonna go ahead and get started with our panel. I'd first like to begin by letting all of our young folks introduce themselves. Tell us who you are, your age, your school, I guess in the public school system, which I think most of you are, as well as if some of you are going off to other brighter things in the near future, you can share that with us as well. But we'll start on the far end with my son, Henning Washington. So we'll start with Henning and we'll come back this way.
Now it's on. There we go. Hi, my name is Henning Washington. I am 18 years old. I am a recent graduate of the Boston Latin School. And I'm about to become an incoming freshman at Boston Conservatory. And I will be studying commercial dance there. Yeah. Thank y'all. Thank y'all.
Hello, my name is John DeLeese. I'm 18 years old, born and raised in Boston. I recently graduated from Tech Boston Academy and will continue my education and athletic career at American International College in Springfield. And I'll also be majoring in business administration / management.
Hi, my name is John Caleb Belzier. I'm 18 years old. I'm Haitian American. I was born and raised in Boston. I just graduated from Boston Prep Charter School, and in the fall, I'll be heading to BU, majoring in music performance.
Hi, my name is Sayomi Santana. I'm 21 years old. I go to UMass Boston, and my background is in visual arts, but I major in IT and anthropology, and my hope is to eventually return to City Hall. I interned there for a couple summers, and continue my career somewhere in the arts or in IT. I love working, doing work that benefits other people.
Hi, my name is Jades Hernandez. I am 20 years old. I'm currently a rising junior at Boston University, but previously I graduated from BLS, and I'm studying psychology with a minor in business.
And I was just reminded when Sayomi that that's where I met you was at an event with the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture. That's right. That's how we poached you from them. Sorry. I'll turn it over to you, Mayor Wu. I know you have some questions prepared for the young people here today.
Yeah, so, okay, it looks like we have two mics here for you all, and then I'm on this one, and these. And then we have, or did you have one?
I have
oh,
one
you
as
have
well.
one too. Okay, great. So those are for you guys. I mean, first of all, my heart is so full. It's a combination of awe and pride and inspiration. I'm so thankful and grateful to all of you for not just all the hard work that you've put into getting yourselves where you are academically, artistically, but from a community perspective as well. Once you are part of this Community Music Center family and part of the Boston family, we're going to hold on to you. So wherever you are going, know that the city has your back, and we can't wait to see all that you'll accomplish. I think from that perspective, as you have experienced all the different pieces of what it's been like to grow up in the city of Boston, whether through the Boston Public Schools or other schools, trying to find time to nurture your art, trying to take care of family or all the other pieces of your lives, what advice do you have for us in city government on how we can make that whole juggle easier for young people?
Okay, so I would say just to like keep listening to us. I feel like so often youth in like America just like feel unheard. So I think just like continuing to listen, continuing to have talks like this is a great way to you know, have things change and have things really lead to a future that we all want to see. Because I think like adults often say that like youth are like the ones that are going to be making the changes and like things like that. So I think it's just really important to keep listening and to keep, you know, having these conversations like I just said.
So, just going off of what he said, I think that is a great starting point. Having these conversations is one way to be like in touch with what the youth actually see for the future of Boston, but I think also is supporting the things that youth are already doing and going to them and meeting them where they're at, because I think so many youth are, like, unfortunately they fall through the cracks because people don't see them, people don't see their struggle. And I think knowing where these pain points are and knowing where to find where these cracks are, where students and young people can fall through, and addressing those issues is part of what we can do to support the youth that won't necessarily come to these conversations but are still absolutely valuable.
I would vote for her.
I think I will say, specifically as somebody that, when I first moved to Boston, I went to a predominantly black school in a predominantly black area. And something that I noticed while I was there was that the culture in that area, there was a general distrust of city government. And so I think one of the key things, especially in a city that is majority minority, is finding ways to win their trust back, which I think steps are already being taken to do that. But I think that is definitely one of the big things is gaining the trust back of the public in a big way.
I would like to add probably keeping the balance of business and relationship. Like Jim Caleb was saying, like, we do have a voice and we appreciate being heard, and we do acknowledge like the things that are already being done, but to push like youth to engage in these type of conversations with topics that are not only interesting, but topics that do affect them in the long run too.
Mm-hmm.
Mayor Wu, did you have another question?
Sure,
that you
I'll
want to add?
throw, well, can I do a two-part one? Is that cheating?
We love two-part
Okay.
questions. You should be in our staff meetings, but absolutely, we love it.
So, well, first of all, thank you for all the advice and feedback. I will say that the gap in trust is in some ways what got me into government, because I grew up in a family that was very skeptical or even maybe mistrustful / even afraid of being in spaces that were traditionally government spaces where we had many interactions where it didn't feel like the system was designed for us. And so for young people in particular, and for many other constituency groups, have tried to be specific about identifying where you can plug in, and then therefore taking accountability for where we can be reaching out. So we created an Office of Youth Engagement and Advancement, also known as OYEA, which has done things like host the first ever Mayor's Youth Summit in over 20 years. That happened last year. We're trying to make it bigger and better than ever before, so I want to get all you all and your friends and contacts involved in that. And that's kind of my theory. If you want something to change and happen in city government in particular, which you've experienced, you can do it. But to make it stick, to make it lasting, to make it real in the long term, and to build that trust, you have to have focus and you have to have that dedication to it. And so Kristen McSwain, for example, is our amazing senior advisor on a whole bunch of things. But in terms of early childhood, we had not had a specific place that had lived. It had been kind of spread out everywhere. And now she's also wearing another hat of putting together our Connect, Learn, and Explore program, which is a guarantee that any Boston kid growing up in our city, in addition to great education, in addition to great job pathways, should also be able to access what you think of as making a full life, right? Learning how to ride a bike, learning how to swim, being involved in the arts, playing youth sports, getting your hands dirty in the dirt by growing things in nature. And so we try to take down barriers on all those fronts. So my two-part question is, just from an arts perspective, kind of what has that meant to you personally, your development and kind of focus in this area? And if there were one thing that you could change in the city to make arts and culture more accessible to others, whether through school or community or fund it, whatever it is, what would that one thing be?
Okay, so I think I have a bit of insight on this because I interned for the Office of Arts and Culture, and when I didn't realize that there were so many supports available for people who want to continue doing arts in Boston. And from the outside looking in, it looked as if like all of these arts organizations were moving outside of Boston and that they were, you know, they couldn't afford the rent in their space or they got developed out or whatever it may be. But the first thing that I noticed was that there were people still there, like actively paying attention to where these changes were happening. So I think based on what I have seen is to make sure that art spaces can afford and are supported in Boston, and that there is support available for people who want to find these places and find these spaces to do that. And I think that is important to Boston because Boston is nothing without its culture, without its people, and people can't express that without their art and without their ability to express themselves being supported. And I think that is like that is one way to keep Boston Boston and not just turn it into like one big massive business development. You know, we want people in Boston to feel like, you know, that they're walking around in their neighborhoods and they feel like they see themselves in the community in the surrounding area. And we also want people to enjoy living here and have things to do, you know, other than work and go home and stay in traffic.
What has your arts practice meant to you?
Oh, to me, personally, my arts practice is about self-expression and about communicating like emotions through visuals, through work. I know there's a lot of talented musicians in here. I am not one of them, but I do love the visual arts and I participate in them a lot. And another thing that visual artists in Boston do really well is they bring the community together, and there's a lot of like local artist events and artists that want to see other artists grow and develop, and I think that is also part of why I love the arts, because we all want to see each other succeed, and no one is above anyone else.
Yeah, so
It was already on.
It's not on. Now it's on. There we go. No, I would say, so for me, I am sort of a multifaceted artist. I'm a dancer by way of training, but I have done almost everything. But I will say that there is, even in 2024, there is a big stigma against arts education and the futures that you can have in the arts. And so I would say a big way to make advancements in that sense is to destigmatize it. Work with community leaders to reach out to these spaces where, you know, it might have a more negative stigma, and try and be like, yo, there are actual ways that you can do this. There is this pathway, there's this pathway. So I would say that's one way. And I would also say the people that are already doing that work, I would say support them on a financial and a political level, because at the end of the day, art is a language and art is a protest. And so I would say supporting the artistic movements in that sense, I would say is another big way.
For me, I just want to quickly weigh in. I feel like I've grown up in the arts in a way. My mom was an art teacher growing up. She was my art teacher, in fact, at my elementary school. So I've always been surrounded by art, and later on, when I was younger, I started to play viola. So I feel like I've just always been in the Boston art space. So, and I think one thing that I've noticed about it is that growing up, it was really hard to stick with the arts. Both of my siblings also started when I started, but they stopped because they were pursuing other things and they just couldn't really see themselves pursuing that all the way. And I just think that for so many like Black and brown and youth of color, with arts, it's just an issue of like sometimes with like access and like knowing that there are like resources for them, and knowing that there are like a bunch of programs where even if you're not like the majority and you might be the only one, you're still valid and you are still important and you are still valued in that community. So I think like that would be a way to really like show that like even younger youth that like there is a space in arts for you, and I think there's a space in arts for everybody. So yeah.
Kind of adding on to like what John Caleb said, me personally, like I was also raised in like a very artistic home. My dad's a musician, but we were more like self-taught. And it wasn't until I got to high school that I was able to like actually pursue art. And so I think just like making it more accessible even within like the contents of our education, like really prioritizing it, just because like they were speaking, a lot of the students of the city of Boston are people of color. So it's like there are a lot of spaces where they feel already very restricted, and they already feel like weighed down by the pressures of the world, unfortunately. So like having the space is kind of like crucial because they're able to experience something that like they've never experienced before, and that's like freedom and joy.
Did you have a two-parter, or shall we? Oh.
Got one more thing. Yeah, just one more thing. So I am a part of the street dance community here in Boston. There is a sort of the big leader of that community. His name is Ashton Lights. We know him as Stacks. But for a lot of his events, I think he started this maybe a year or two ago, but he actually started going to government to get grants to put on these events. But when I had a conversation with him and he was talking about all the hoops he had to jump through and how hard it was to get that funding. So making it easier for people who want to reach out to get that support, to be able to cultivate these spaces where those cultures and where those art forms can thrive. If the people are asking for the help to be able to create that space, making it easier to be able to access it.
I want to give a quick shout out to the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture. We have partnered with the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture many times, and the work that they've been doing with Stiggity Stacks as well. And so there is a lot of great work, but I do hear that same thing that these young folks are talking about is people don't always know about everything, and that's not only on that office; it's on the rest of us in the arts community as well. But many of these young people who are here right now, they were part of our Town project, which was a partnership with Cara and the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture with your chief, Chief Cara, and it was again some of these folks are byproducts of us being able to learn a lot more about youth employment and youth empowerment. I do want to pivot.
There's one more voice on this question.
Well, there was another one. Sorry.
Do you want my ear? You're good? Okay, good.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Okay, sorry.
I do want to pivot. I want to give them an opportunity to ask you some questions, Mayor Wu. And for you all, and you're all familiar with this. I know you've been prepped, but remember, this is an opportunity for you to have a legitimate voice. So as you're asking your questions, really be thoughtful about giving the mayor some opportunities to have action. Not only to change the thinking, so it's wonderful to have a conversation, but it's something else to turn that conversation into action. And so as you're thinking about framing your questions, thinking about them around the perspective of some actions that the city can take in order to support you, your work, your future, and your communities as well. So if you don't mind, I'll start with you, Jades. But please, you want to share what your question is for the mayor?
So my question was mainly about like equity. So in what ways are you prioritizing making Boston more equitable for the different like demographics and also like economic demographics present?
Yeah, well, okay, we're starting with a small question. I would hope that everything that we are doing in the city is first and foremost to drive towards equity. I say every single day that the mission that I hope our administration moves on is to make Boston a home for everyone in every sense of the word and for every culture, community, generation. I grew up not speaking English as my first language, And in the Chinese language, it's like a character, kind of pictorial language, character by character, and the word for home is actually the same character as the one for family. And so when you're speaking, you have to be precise about, you have to like put another word with that character to mean if you're going to like see your family members or if you're going to the place where your family lives. And that's kind of the vibe for me of Boston can't be a home until everyone is truly part of our family. And we're doing things that create educational opportunities that are accessible everywhere, including opportunities for arts, sports, nature, et cetera, that we are creating job pipelines that really are opening up the doors for everyone. For example, right now, one of the fastest growing parts of our economy in Boston, and also happens to be one of the fastest growing nationally, is in the life sciences. But it's not always a field that has felt accessible to Black and brown communities or everyone who's sort of residing in Boston. We've seen a lot of companies come and jobs come, and then they recruit from elsewhere, and people move, and we welcome everyone who wants to be a part of our community, but we also want to make sure that the residents who are here, who've been building our neighborhoods, have access to everything that's happening, from transportation improvements to job opportunities to housing that we're creating. And so we have an initiative that is going to place 1,000 Boston residents through training into biotech jobs. We partnered between Mass General Brigham to make sure that they basically built a one-of-a-kind national precedent-setting partnership with the EMK Health Careers Academy so that our young people will have direct pathways into the jobs that everyone needs to get filled for their healthcare and their well-being. And I think even in the most fundamental way, one of the most powerful powers of city government that is rarely talked about is the zoning code. I know, and as soon as I say zoning, everyone's eyes kind of go, okay. But this is the written language, if you will, that sets the rules for how we grow as a city. Where do we build buildings? How tall? What are they used for? And over time, the way that Boston has developed in an inequitable way is because certain things have been pushed in certain areas, certain things have been allowed in others, but not here. Resources have been gathered in different places, and that's a legacy that goes back decades and generations, well before redlining, well, on and on and on. But we are doing, the city's zoning code hasn't been updated comprehensively since 1965. And it's meant that 97+% of buildings in Boston violate that code and have gotten a special exception to get built. And how do you get a special exception? You either know someone who can help you figure out the system, right? Jump through all those hoops and barriers, or you have the resources to pay someone who specializes in getting you through that system. So our goal is we are actually undertaking the first ever citywide revamping of the zoning code for, and the focus stated, there are 3 things that our planning department prioritizes: equity, affordability, and resiliency. So those are the driving factors. When we say home for everyone, we mean the safest city, the greenest city, and the most family-friendly city in America.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that response. And Nate, I would love to. Oh, did you want to make a comment, Saomi, or?
Yeah, I was gonna go into my question. I think it relates very well to what you were just talking about, the zoning codes and where you build buildings, how you decide where certain things go. If you don't mind me asking, I'd want to know if you want to say something.
No, please.
Yeah, so I want to start this by saying I live in South Boston, and I have my whole life, 21 years living on the same street in Southie, and I have watched it change dramatically. In the past 20 years, it has basically become an entirely different neighborhood, and it's for the good, and also there's some negatives to it. For example, I live on D Street, and what I like to call it, what me and my friends call it, is the tax bracket street, because across the street, it's a completely different tax bracket of people who live there than the other side. And obviously on the other side of D Street is the West Broadway housing development. So what I wanted to ask about is, in terms of developing an area and supporting the community and wanting it to grow and be better,
what do you think the balance is between making improvements in an area and supporting the people who live there and making it difficult for the people who live there to stay there? What is the balance between developing and like improvement and gentrification?
Yeah, that is the driving question of what's going to define who we are as a city in this next couple of years. I think between the choices that we make on how we structure development, that will, I mean, it's basically those three categories, right? Equity, affordability, resiliency. Who can stay, which groups are included and not included, and how safe will we be from a pure flooding, heat, all the impacts of climate change that are coming. And I think the key, okay, well, first of all, I'm so excited. I didn't imagine I would get to talk zoning code here this morning. It's like my dream.
You're at CMCB. We talk a lot about zoning code here. It's open class on Saturdays.
So,
the music around the zoning code, of course.
Right, exactly. So basically, the process of how you change the zoning code really, really matters, right? It can't just be some people in a room on the 9th floor of City Hall or wherever writing some words down and signing a paper. The way that we've been doing development has community members only participating at the very end, when often it's too late to change much about the project. Maybe you can tweak it around the edges, but people's voices haven't really been heard. The community voices should really be shaping the very beginning, setting our rules so that there's predictability for everyone. So we kicked off what's called Squares and Streets. It's a way for community members to engage and just dream with us. What's missing from your neighborhood? What do you love and need to protect? What do we want to integrate, and how do we make sure that every community that's represented in each neighborhood has what they need? And so that's going to be a multi-year process, but we're kind of going through one by one and baking that into the code. A key around development, I would say this isn't just buildings, but street improvements, beautification of parks, even climate and infrastructure improvements. You have to do the improvements along with stabilization. And that's why we've been focusing on transportation, not as just making buses go faster, because that's probably the place we can control most within the public transit system relative to the city, relative to the state, because we control the roadways and how buses run, we don't control the trains, et cetera. But not just making them go faster with how we structure the roads, but in the places where it matters most and trying to expand from there, making them free, right? So guaranteeing that residents who live there will be the ones who benefit from that. And I think just to kind of tie it back to the main focus of why we're here today, it's really important to have the voices of artists and creatives in this process, right? It's not, when you separate out different buckets of people, you miss out on, one, the way to fully engage everyone. There's no more powerful way to bring people into the process than through the arts, and making sure we are communicating what we're doing, no matter how technical or how wonky or nerdy the topic is. Arts helps make it real for people. And it also brings a perspective that is much needed. So we created the first ever Planning Advisory Council to help guide some of these rules. And one of the cabinets that is firmly involved in that, along with housing, small business, transportation, climate, is our arts and culture cabinet. And there have been little ways too. I mean, Kenny would be able to share much more, but am I right that actually Stiggity Stacks is one of the artists that had worked with the city on thinking through how we redevelop parks, and including how do we design spaces specifically for dance in the parks, and then building that into how we make those decisions. Kenny, is there anything else you want to highlight that I'm missing on this area?
Well, that's one thing that our Artist in Residency program is, where we work with artists and city agencies to kind of like imagine what are some ways that artists and community members can improve the relationship between arts and the city. So Stiggity, as a dancer, came and worked with Parks Department and pondered the question, what if we had dance courts the same way we have basketball courts? So as a way to, again, bring hip hop back to the park where it all started, bring young people back outside. So it's a synergistic way that we work with community members and artists specifically to reimagine how city government can be impactful. So all those ideas are ways that we invite to be in partnership with as an artist in residency to make those changes happen. It doesn't happen overnight, so that's why the residency program is about 2 years. a year for research, conversation, and then a year for implementation, and then evaluation, so that we can figure out how to sustain and multiply and create sustainability for these programs.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And well, I want to turn it over. Nate, I did want to hear your question because you're asking some questions, I think. A slight little pivot here, but also very much a community-based question as well. So Nate, did you want to ask your question about schools?
Yeah.
It should be on, it should be green if it's on. Is there a red light or a green light?
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so my question is for areas like schools like Dorchester, Roxbury, Hyde Park that don't necessarily receive the right attraction, or even certain districts that are trying their best to advance things like education and opportunities and things like that. So what would be your advice or plan of action for schools who aren't really deeply funded or recognized but want to build a bigger brand or expand their education and seek opportunities like partnerships and develop better infrastructure and such like that?
Yeah, I think we're all kind of talking about the same thing. This gets back to equity. This gets back to how we make decisions about which resources are where and how we grow. We are this school year, or this coming school year, 50 years from the decision around court-mandated desegregation for the Boston Public Schools, because our school committee at that point refused to do it voluntarily. And the impacts of that on Boston, we can still feel, not just in the school system, but in so many other policy areas that we are still trying to repair and move forward and show that there's a way to earn trust and bring everyone together. I think on the schools, first of all, the pandemic for educators everywhere was possibly the hardest, most difficult experience that anyone could have gone through. And, I have 2 kids in the Boston Public Schools. I saw what it was like of trying to mobilize everything and keep people safe and save lives and try to teach and try to this and that. So our teachers end up being, and school leaders and all those, school nurses, it's everyone in the school ends up absorbing what happens in the classroom really reflects what happens in our streets, what happens in our homes. And so addressing quality education really is about addressing economic stability across our city, in different neighborhoods, addressing housing, jobs, opportunities. And so we've been trying to kind of layer this from a number of different ways. First and foremost, school buildings need to be fixed up. And you can see where buildings have been fixed and where they haven't. And we've been going really slow over the last many, many years, right? It was at the pace of probably one new school every decade or so. And it took a while, there was lots of conversations, we had to find the funding. We've been trying over the last 2 years to do the work up front so that we can systematize it all. We asked everyone for every school, across every neighborhood, what is the basic guarantee that a high school has to have, and what is the basic guarantee of kinds of things that an elementary school has to have? And therefore we have the templates that of course are gonna get tweaked based on each neighborhood and what the needs are, but even just having done that one time across the board, that makes it faster to do every new school. We also, for the very first time ever, if you can believe it, finally have a database that's maintained in real time of what the needs are. Before, there wasn't any way to understand when a heating system in one school was about to break down because it was already 15 years old, or when some windows needed to be fixed. And so now we have a place where everyone can go in and see for every single school what is the score that it has in terms of how close it is to delivering the high quality student experience that we believe everyone deserves. With that information, we're really moving towards a long-term facilities plan, because I think whether you have classroom space that's adequate, performing arts space, restorative justice spaces in the schools, that science labs, that determines the foundation for everything else that can layer on top of it. We've also been doing a really heavy focus on partnerships. The classroom for Boston young people shouldn't just be within a building. It should be the entire city. And so making arts and culture institutions free for our Boston Public School students, making sure we're partnering with all the colleges and universities and hospitals and every institution in the city that has resources, every time I go to talk to a tech company or I'm in the boardroom of a major employer, when they say, well, what should we do to help the city? I say, get involved with our schools, right? Every single school should have some special partnership, multiple, that we've been able to create. And then I think just in terms of the little tweaks, we've been focusing a lot on early education because that's the best possible foundation. Thanks to Kristen's work and the team, we've expanded universal pre-K by 1,200 seats in the city, including about 400 family-based childcare centers that previously weren't ever connected to the city system. That's also a great entrepreneurship and job opportunity for many families who are finding a way to raise their own kids and have the talent and passion to do that across the community. For the first time, we created a one-stop shop website called Great Starts, where if you want to figure out where your options are in childcare and early education, it's all in one place. We're moving towards being able to sign up and enroll in that system too. And then on the high school side, again, sports, arts, internships. This year we uncapped the number of paid youth summer jobs that would be available in the city, so that with a guarantee that every BPS student who wanted one would get one, and we keep trying to add to the opportunity there. We have the most summer, what's called fifth quarter summer learning opportunities than ever before. Learning while you're doing sailing camp, learning while you're doing tennis, learning while you are at the zoo, understanding animals. And so that it should just be like a continuous year-round, all-day, everywhere across the city approach.
Before we get to Henning and John Caleb's questions, because those are the next couple of questions are about you, about your experience, and kind of who you are as a leader. I had just one quick question. I wasn't born and raised in Boston. I moved here in 2017 to become the executive director here at the Community Music Center of Boston. And one of the things that has been striking to me during my time is that it's a city with a lot of really smart minds, and there are a lot of conversations that happen. I came here, I arrived a few months before the Spotlight series on race came out. So I got here in August, that came out November-ish. And it was amazing how silent that became soon after that. And so, although there were a lot of conversations around it. So I guess my question for you is, there's this concept called the pace of privilege, the way that things change, the way that things move, which is different than the pace of change. And so here I am here in year 7. There are a lot of conversations that we were having in 2017 that have not really moved much from 2017 to now. And so I'm curious, as we're talking about you as a leader, how do you navigate this relationship between the pace of privilege, because the most privileged among the group are the ones who typically determine the pace of change, and the ones who are most impacted by it are not the ones who have the greatest amount of power, but they're the ones who want the pace to be faster. So I'm just curious about you as a leader. How do you navigate in a way that allows you to, what I would consider to combat the pace of privilege and move more towards this idea and the concept of the pace of change? How do you think about that? And this is speaking as two leaders. I'm also a leader that's trying to find the right balance between the two. So I'm curious, and my size and scope is different than yours. And so I'm curious, based on your size and scope, how do you manage that? How do you balance that conceptually?
So I would say, okay, I will say that I've actually grown as a leader to think about a third dimension to that too, which I will get to. But I think my hope and my, like where my first thought always is I've described myself as an impatient leader, right? And that has a lot of different connotations, but I'm a mom. That's why I do this, right? It's so chaotic being a mom and doing this, but also so important because you just realize, right? Like every year that we don't fix a school, another class of seniors graduates and is on to having missed out on what that could have delivered. The Quincy School, which we are about to open before this fall, which will be amazing and incredible, that from start to finish will have been a 12-year project to renovate that school. For multiple reasons, it was complicated, there were land swaps and this and that, but the first graders who started or the kindergartners even who were at the school when we first said we're gonna fix this are gone now by next year by the time it starts. And so we just have to get going faster. And I think for me, I focus on the pace of community and the pace of needs and people. At the same time, the third dimension that has come into that is the combination, I don't know, call it the need to build trust, or call it the reaction to larger disruption. It's really felt like, even in just the last couple years, our country and our politics have shifted so much, right? Even since the last mayoral election, look what's happened nationally, and now we just have had a whole number of shifts, even last week, which are exciting, but story for another day.
Yeah.
But what I have found is that we came into office, I ran on a campaign saying, here are all the things we're gonna do. Here's how we can address long-standing challenges based on conversations with community over multiple years, right? And yet, when you get started on that, each change on its own is great and makes sense and has to have its own process to be done right. But then all of a sudden, when people are feeling like change is coming from all directions now on the streets and in the parks and White Stadium and in the schools, then it feels like, okay, we need to not only understand individual things that are changing, but how it all fits together. And so that process of not just managing through each individual change or engagement, but building a relationship with communities to have the muscle for how do we really ensure that this is a two-way, constant partnership that's about multiple things and their relationship to each other, rather than, look over here, this is going great, look over here, this is why we need to do this, and then everyone's saying, well, what should I be focusing on? I'm just tired and want it to slow down. So I think there are multiple feedback loops that are needed. Some of it is building up almost the evidence or proof, or really being able to say you can never be certain about anything, but to really not just speak from a values perspective about why we need to do something, but here's how we thought about all the alternatives. Here's how we thought about how we've documented and quantified the impacts that specific communities will experience with this. Because another dimension of Boston's history in particular is even when there has been change proposed in the past, it's often, particularly for Black and brown communities, come with an experience of, this is good for you, don't worry, this change is needed, and then it didn't end up being what was promised, or the impacts, right? Or urban renewal, one example after another. And so to match what the vision with the result with the long-term impact really requires being in relationship with community.
No, thank you for that. That's that relationship between tactics and strategy is big. And to your comment in Roxbury, there was this comment. We just see it, Community Music Center Boston just bought a building, as you know, in Nubian Square. And so we've been. I plugged that. But and a lot of the conversations that folks have been around the ways in which not only citywide, but organizations have made promises that there was supposed to be an orange line stop that was supposed to go through Nubian, and it got moved over to Columbus. And so there's still, even now, here I am, I wasn't here for that, I didn't know anything about it, but these conversations around us as an organization delivering, that's what's coming up. Exactly. So that wind is still in people's faces from time to time. And so I appreciate you for recognizing that. We have time for one more question. And Caleb, I'd love to have you ask the final question of the afternoon. Good morning.
So like LaColine was saying, this is kind of about you. So from your multifaceted perspective, being a woman of color, being a mother, what is it like to be mayor? How have you navigated that space, and what advice do you have for young people on how to navigate spaces where they might not be the majority?
Okay, what's it like is an incredibly complicated question. It's every day, it's beautiful and awe-inspiring and humbling, and I truly pinch myself that someone who grew up in an immigrant family, really just in many parts of our family history just trying to survive, could be in a place to have an impact and to have a front row seat on trying to make our city better for everyone is just it just feels like the greatest gift and blessing that I could ever have experienced. It's also incredibly hard and can be quite emotionally exhausting in moments, because the beauty of the job at the city level is that, public service in any form is amazing, and I hope all of you will incorporate that into your careers. We certainly need more of you to be mayors and presidents and in elected office as well, so talk to me when you are interested. But at the local level, there is this kind of raw, direct connection with people that is different than anywhere else, where policies and funding at the federal level are so important. They shape the entire landscape. But by the time all that actually gets to touch people's lives, it is city governments that are the ones that are implementing it. It's seeing the faces of the people that you are having an impact on, and knowing that if you don't get this right, you also know who is going to live with the consequences of that. And so that kind of accountability is really real. And then, Boston is one of the oldest cities in America. We're going to celebrate our 400th anniversary in 2030. I am the first woman of color and person of color to be elected to this role in those many hundreds of years at this point, only following Kim Janey, who was the first ever woman of color to serve in this role when she was acting mayor prior to me. And maybe you've already experienced some of this so far, maybe you will as you continue in your careers, but it's hard being the first. It's beautiful, it's necessary, and there are so many people who are going to make sure that you have everything you need to do that. But when you are the first to bust through those walls or glass or bamboo ceilings or whatever the sort of metaphorical material is, you come out of it with bruises and scars. And that's an experience, just like her community lives with, that is also something as an individual, it's really important to find ways to remember how to center yourself and have that way to nourish and replenish and be around your people who can remind you of who you are and why you're doing what you do. I grew up in the arts as well at a time when arts were maybe my parents' most direct language to feel connected in a country that where English was not the way that they could feel connected to people. And that's really, I think, shaped how I see our relationship with each other. Arts, I believe, is how you feel the humanity of everyone around you, and how you then gather that for protest, for revolution, for change. And I think in government and public service, ultimately, it is about seeing and building in the humanity of everyone in our community. And some days when you look at the headlines in politics right now, it doesn't feel like everyone sees it that way. And so it's a particularly complex but really consequential time to be doing things like this, to be trying to make change in the community. And so most of all, my ask for you all is we need you. We need you to lead. We need you to step up however you feel called to step up as soon as you possibly feel it. Even if others don't tell you that you're ready, even if there's lots of reasons why it might feel like you need to, self-doubt or this and that, your community needs you in these roles as soon as you possibly can.
Well, thank you all. First, I want to give a big round of applause to our panelists. You talk about being inspired and hearing all of these young people here, the questions that they're asking. I think it mandates us, to those of us who are in positions of power, to make policy, to control what's happening. It's a mandate for us to do better. Because they are watching. We think we're talking to each other, but we're talking to them too. Even though they may not be in the room, they're thinking about what we're doing in that room, and what we're doing there really matters to the young people and the future of this city. And so I'm inspired by the young people so much, because again, it feels like a mandate to those of us in positions of power, whatever your position of power is. And I think that as we're continuing to do our work, we remind ourselves that we are not only speaking for the organizations that we're part of, the people who are in the room with us, the representatives, the council members, but we're also speaking on behalf of these young people who are asking us questions about the impact of zoning on their neighborhoods. And so I think that that's an important thing for us to recognize and to realize. And Mayor, can we give a round of applause for Mayor Wu as well? Mayor Wu, you have proven yourself once again to be a person who listens. You're a person who hears what folks are saying. You bring a level of humility to the position that is inspiring, I think, to all people, and I think it should be a model for every mayor from here forward. So I want to, on behalf of the Community Music Center of Boston, thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you.
And then to all of you, thank you so much for coming. Again, for those of you who this is your first visit to the Community Music Center of Boston, I hope this won't be your last. For those of you who this is your 100th visit, look forward to seeing you at 101. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of the day.